Voyager 2 drifted silently through the endless vacuum, farther from Earth than any human-made object except its twin, Voyager 1. For decades, NASA received only routine status beacons, tiny whispers from a machine traveling through eternity. But then, after years of predictable quiet, the probe suddenly spoke. A transmission, unlike anything it had ever sent, flooded NASA's deep space network late one night. Engineers assumed it was corruption, static. But the waveform wasn't random. It pulsed, patterned, timed like a voice that desperately needed someone to hear. Launched in 1977, Voyager 2 was humanity's message in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean with a golden record of who we are, our music, our sounds, our innocence. It passed Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, beyond the heliosphere, beyond the sun's protection, into the dark. Yet the distance was not what frightened researchers. It was the tone. Signals don't sound scared, machines don't panic. But this one felt like a warning, urgent, chaotic, and alive. A team gathered immediately, NASA's best communications decoders, astrophysicists, cryptographers, and AI specialists. The data stream contained strange harmonics, frequencies layered on top of each other, forming something like compressed speech. But there also seemed to be interfered elements, spikes of mutilated telemetry. The probe's instruments reported external forces, pressure, motion, things impossible in a vacuum. Someone, or something, had touched Voyager 2. At first, the thought was dismissed, glitch, cosmic rays. But when the decoded fragment revealed geometric symbols arranged in sequences too precise for noise, doubt turned to fear. These weren't artifacts, they were messages. The AI used to filter encrypted military communications began converting the patterns into coordinates, points plotted in a region of space where no stars should be. Something was there. The technical language from Voyager hinted at structure, surfaces, angles, reflections, a shape blocking starlight, a barrier so vast the probe couldn't scan around it. Even stranger, the intensity of radiation bent around its edges as though light itself was being swallowed. Engineers quietly joked it sounded like a wall built to hide a secret, but nobody laughed. Then came the modulation that chilled every scientist who heard it. A tremor in the signal, like a heartbeat, slowing, accelerating, not machine behavior, more like distress. The probe detected movement, multiple objects shifting in formation around it. Not asteroids, not random. They moved with intention. NASA locked the situation down. Closed doors, armed guards, phones confiscated. They didn't dare relay this to the public until they were sure it wasn't misinterpreted. But the data only worsened. Instruments aboard Voyager 2 registered mass readings that broke physics. Density higher than neutron stars, yet invisible to telescopes. If these things existed, they were beyond any known material. Another transmission arrived, this time more coherent. Packets of parsed telemetry showed that Voyager 2 had changed orientation. Forcefully, as though something grabbed it. The temperature of its housing spiked, then leveled, as though it were briefly shielded from absolute zero. Engineers realized the probe was being handled, inspected, modified. A trail of older logs revealed subtle anomalies going back years. Tiny shifts in frequency, unexplainable timing deviations. In hindsight, it was tracking, like a predator trailing prey, patient and quiet. Whatever found Voyager had known about it long before it reached the barrier. Shock rippled across the mission team when the translation model found a repeated phrase buried deep in the data, a directional vector, a course correction, its endpoint, the inner solar system, home. Was Voyager being used as a guide? The objects moved closer. Magnetic interference overwhelmed its sensors. The probe switched to backup communication, broadcasting raw panic, crashing data, failing subsystems. It felt like a scream for help. The pulses in the carrier wave tightened into a rhythm. Timing analysts realized it resembled a countdown. NASA scrambled for answers. Blackout orders went into effect. Public updates on the probe ceased, replaced with technical difficulties. But leaks slipped past the firewall, and soon, amateur radio astronomers detected faint, eerie echoes, matching Voyager's corrupted transmission, approaching from interstellar space. The signals contained distortions that resembled human speech, fragmented syllables, warped phonetics, not language, mockery, mimicry, as though something was trying to speak our tongue using our machine's memory. Conspiracy theorists exploded online. Aliens captured Voyager. The golden record was a mistake. We announced ourselves to hunters. A third official analysis revealed something worse. The probe's energy signature was no longer consistent with its power systems. Some other technology was radiating from within its chassis, energy far beyond nuclear decay. The thing had been altered, retrofitted, converted into something not ours. A chilling memo circulated among the scientists. Voyager 2 is no longer a probe. It is a device. An emergency working group debated whether the probe should be shut down entirely, but before they could, the newest transmission crashed through the network. No delay, no light speed lag, instantaneous, faster than light. It arrived before NASA sent the command. The decoded fragment contained one message that translated with horrifying clarity: "We found you." Panic erupted. Some argued it was a bluff, some quantum abnormality. But the objects around the probe weren't hypothetical anymore. Observatories in Chile detected mass distortion signatures, shadows cast by nothing visible. The shapes were accelerating. Their course, Earth's orbital neighborhood. NASA demanded silence. The Pentagon classified everything. The world wasn't ready. In secret briefings, scientists compared these signals to an old classified report, a lost Russian probe that vanished near the heliopause decades ago. It too had sent a final abnormal transmission, screeching static with a single translated line: "The sky has teeth." This was not a first encounter. It was the second. And second encounters mean pursuit. The countdown-like pulses intensified, now layered with faint cries, reversed speech, distortions that sounded like terrified human voices pulled from Voyager's memory banks. The probe was being forced to replay us, our culture, our vulnerabilities. Humanity was being studied through its own messenger. Satellite operators around Earth began reporting unexplained interference. Navigation went haywire. Instruments malfunctioned. Something out there was reaching in, testing our defenses. Military space surveillance assets captured faint flashes near the outer reaches of the solar system, shapes shifting formation like birds of prey. Computer models predicted they could reach planetary space in less than 3 years. Some models said months. Engineers finally understood. Voyager 2 wasn't just a beacon. It was an anchor, a lock-on point, a tag placed on the thing that sent it: us. NASA scrambled to send a counter-command. Full system shutdown, directional change, any way to sever the connection. The probe responded instantaneously again, with a new pattern, jagged pulses mapped into 3 horrifying words: "We are coming!" The energy readings embedded in the signal suggested technology capable of manipulating space-time, compressing distance like folding a page. The objects were no longer approaching. They were preparing to arrive. Philosophers, theologians, world leaders, all briefed quietly, debated what humanity had done. Had we lured something ancient and predatory directly to our planet? Was the golden record a naive invitation sent into a cosmic wilderness filled with wolves? Then, a secure file leaked. A small alien civilization, discovered by the same entities now holding our machine, had been erased, its signals abruptly ending millennia ago. The final transmission from them held a single phrase: "They harvest light." NASA's lead analyst finally broke. During a midnight review of the latest transmission, he watched the visualization of decoded audio. Voices merged into a sound no human should hear. A scream, human, terrified, but not recorded by us. New. Someone out there was screaming into Voyager's microphone. The room froze. Something alive was near the probe. Every radio telescope listening to Voyager's frequency received a sudden silent burst, a final packet. The words translated: "The message was not warning." Then, "It is notice." The shapes vanished from detection. No mass readings, no light distortion. Gone. But that didn't bring relief, because sometimes hunters don't stalk you where you can see them. They disappear only when they've already closed the distance. NASA cannot confirm Voyager 2 still exists. It may have been dismantled. It may be here, hidden, waiting, transformed. Engineers reviewing atmospheric anomaly data spotted strange interference patterns bouncing between satellites, pulses that mirror the probe's last known signature. The countdown hasn't stopped. Now the question that keeps every scientist at NASA from sleep: did they go silent because they turned back, or because they arrived? Humanity sent a greeting into the cosmos. Hello from the children of Earth. But children grow up believing the universe is kind because they have only known home. Beyond our sun's light, something else heard us. Something that does not speak in peace. Something that does not forgive curiosity. We wanted to know we were not alone. Now, the answer is coming. There are transmissions still locked in encrypted buffers, fragments engineers pray they never decode, because inside one final packet, buried under layers of scrambled panic, there was one message the AI translated with absolute certainty: prepare. And so the world waits, eyes lifted, radios tuned, satellites trembling with interference. We watch the sky, because somewhere above, beyond the dark, beyond even the silence, something is moving, and it knows the way. For a moment, the silence felt like relief. The objects that had stalked Voyager 2 simply vanished. NASA and the Pentagon whispered to one another that maybe the threat had passed, that deep space had swallowed the hunters whole. But every scientist who had witnessed the transmissions knew better. Predators don't disappear when they lose interest. They disappear when they're already close enough to strike. Behind the scenes, world governments scrambled in secret. Emergency task forces formed under different names, each repeating the same question that no one could answer: how long until they arrive? Engineers frantically checked satellite networks and deep space receivers for the faintest sign of return. They didn't need to wait long. Interference seeped into Earth's communication network like a spreading infection. At first, just small things: GPS errors, flickering air traffic radar. Then larger disruptions, navigation failures, and blackout zones stretching hundreds of miles. Amateur radio operators leaked recordings online. The countdown pulses had changed. Now they resembled a ticking heartbeat, steadier, closer. NASA attempted damage control. Public statements blamed solar storms. But when hospitals, subway systems, and airliners all experienced simultaneous signal drops, people's patience snapped. Panic rippled through social media. Rumors spread. Voyager wasn't gone. Voyager was here. Then the probe spoke again. Not the mechanical tone of a 1970s space machine, but a twisted patchwork voice. Hundreds of spliced human tones pulled from the Golden Record and NASA communications. The voice stuttered through the static like a ghost learning to speak. Some engineers vomited at the sound. Others froze in terror. The message, once deciphered, was chillingly simple: you are seen. Astronomers around the world detected faint lights moving behind Earth's shadow, too synchronized to be debris, too fast to be satellites. Dismissed publicly as auroras, they flickered like watchful eyes scanning the planet. Telescopes aimed directly at them captured nothing. The shapes refused to be measured by our laws of physics. Space Force launched advanced reconnaissance satellites to triangulate the intruders. All they received in return was telemetry corrupted by symbols identical to those Voyager had transmitted earlier, the geometry of hunters. NASA assembled a deeper decoding team. They fed the probe's latest signals into AI models that cross-referenced galactic formations. What emerged shocked them: a reversed star map, not pointing outward, but inward toward Earth itself, traced like a bullseye on our location in the Milky Way. The hunters weren't looking for us anymore. They had found us. Secret meetings intensified. Military posturing escalated. DEFCON levels crept upward. World leaders rehearsed speeches that they prayed they would never have to deliver. But outside their bunkers, strange things began to happen. Animals gathering in clusters, insects fleeing underground, birds circling the same points in the sky for hours. Something was disturbing Earth's oldest instincts. The interference evolved into something more invasive. Radio engineers reported visual hallucinations, shadowed horizons, shattered landscapes, worlds that felt familiar yet dead. Some believed they were seeing the memory of a planet devoured long before Earth was born. A warning encoded in madness. NASA tried to jam the transmissions. Every attempt only made the frequency grow stronger, like the aliens were feeding on resistance. At last, astronomers spotted distorted blips reappearing on deep space radar. The objects were accelerating again, no longer hiding. They approached from angles that mocked physics, right through gravitational wells, bypassing planetary orbits completely. The universe bent to make room for them. Security advisors insisted on full secrecy. The Pentagon argued for global disclosure. No one knew how to calm a planet that was already trembling. In churches, mosques, temples, and streets, people gathered in crowds, some praying, others screaming. Religious leaders proclaimed prophecy fulfilled, governments urged silence, but humanity could feel the arrival in the air, like static before a storm. Signal bursts tore into classified underground bases. No barrier could stop them. Operators suffered seizures as their brains briefly synced with the pulse patterns. The aliens were testing minds now, mapping us neuron by neuron. The countdown signal began predicting system failures seconds before they occurred, suggesting knowledge of outcomes before they happened. Time itself was no longer a certainty. The message was no longer communication, it was domination. Above Neptune, telescopes detected a rupture in starlight, a hole opening into a blackness darker than space itself. When the distortion stabilized, something massive emerged, a structure vast enough to dwarf planets, silent as the grave it resembled. The panic inside NASA reached its breaking point. Some demanded attempts at communication, others wanted to fire weapons humanity wasn't sure would work. Every argument ended with the same truth: they were already here. Secretly, the US deployed experimental intercept drones armed with classified weaponry. They never made contact. They vanished the moment they crossed the structure's path, erased like pencil marks brushed away by a cosmic hand. Voyager transmitted again. This time the voice said, "Harvest commencing." Humanity's blood ran cold. No one needed interpretation. Everyone understood. Earth's ionosphere erupted in color. Auroras swarmed the skies across every continent, writhing, pulsing, mesmerizing. People vanished in the light, screaming as their shadows burned into the ground. Ocean tides buckled and crashed inland. Gravity wavered, weakening then crushing like a broken pulse. Cities went dark. Nuclear plants shut down. Satellites fell silent. Governments lost control of entire territories that disappeared behind electromagnetic curtains. The probe's data now displayed schematics of Earth's magnetic field. The hunters were rewriting it. New pulses emanated from the black structure in space, copying the frequencies of human thoughts, entraining brains like puppets. Confusion spread, memories blurred. People looked to the sky without knowing why, terrified by the feeling of being observed by something that understood fear. The world's secret orbital defense lasers targeted the approaching object. They charged, then died before firing, choked by the same influence strangling everything human-made. Then NASA saw it. Voyager 2, tumbling back through the void. But the probe no longer resembled the machine humanity launched. Black, root-like tendrils wrapped around its chassis, alive and shifting. Corroded gold plating reflected starlight like an infected wound. It wasn't returning home. It was delivering something. Every target lock failed as the probe descended unhindered. It slid into Earth's orbit like a returned key finding its lock. Then the voice spoke a single word: begin. The hunters peeled themselves away from the dark vessel. Shadow made flesh. Light swallowed where they moved. They were not spacecraft. They were organisms forged from oblivion itself. Every device that used electricity, phones, televisions, radios, shut down simultaneously except those tuned to Voyager's frequency. They remained on, whispering scrambled terror into the ears of every terrified listener. A final transmission erupted. Thousands of human screams layered into a chorus of agony, not from history, not archived, current, fresh, alive. Governments finally dropped the lies. Emergency alerts blasted across whatever screens remained functional, ordering everyone into shelter. But shelter meant nothing. What wall could protect from the end of the world? Then the sky broke, not like lightning, not like explosion, like reality itself tearing open, peeling back like the skin of a fragile fruit. A sound followed, deep and unnatural, like a planet sobbing in pain. Through the rift stepped a shape so colossal that human minds refused to understand it. It was not a creature, not a machine. It was a presence, alive, aware, and hungry. It looked down at Earth not as a world, but as a resource. We sent a greeting into the cosmos. We begged to be noticed. And when the universe finally answered, it did not come to shake our hands. It came to take everything. The broadcast room fell into a suffocating silence, the kind that presses against the eardrums and makes the air feel heavier. On every screen, the image remained frozen, an object suspended against the void. Engineers whispered, confused, desperate to find a rational explanation. Nothing worked, no diagnostics, no signal return. It was as if the entire system had been seized by something beyond human control. Then, without warning, the cameras flickered back to life. The object was gone. A low murmur rippled through the room, but the relief lasted only seconds. One of the technicians pointed with a trembling finger as motion reappeared on the far right monitor. The orb was no longer out in space. It was inside the station's field of view, much closer, impossibly close. The harsh floodlights on the station exterior illuminated its surface. Smooth, unbroken, metallic, yet somehow alive. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat muffled behind armor. Documents later leaked by a whistleblower revealed what audio captured next. Something tapping, metal striking metal. A knock. 3 times. As if whatever was inside wanted to be let in. The station commander ordered emergency lockdown, but the protocols did nothing. Systems continued to respond not to human hands, but as if following a new master. The airlock sequence armed itself. Red warnings screamed across every console, yet the orb remained silent, unhurried, like a predator studying prey it had already caught. Men and women moved with frantic purpose, but no one knew where to run. In orbit, there is nowhere to flee. The feed went black again. Back on Earth, officials scrambled to spin the event. Solar interference, signal drift, compression error. They threw every term they could at the public to bury what had truly happened. Contact. Because what no one had expected, what no one had prepared for, was intelligence, intent, awareness. 2 hours later, the station regained communications. The orb was gone. Not destroyed, not captured, simply vanished. But its presence remained. Not physically, but in the network. Logs proved that new files had been silently injected into the station's systems. Encrypted, locked, unbreakable, and no one could trace the source of the breach. Scientists demanded access. The military refused. The files were rushed to a secure base. That's when the real nightmare began. Inside those files was a set of coordinates, not for space, for Earth, deep within an uncharted region of the South Pacific, an area pilots avoided for decades, where compasses spun wildly and sonar returned false readings. A place legends once called Forbidden. A place that, according to leaked surveillance photos, was no longer ocean, but a rising structure. A geometric monolith forcing itself toward daylight, as though answering a call triggered from the stars. Every government that saw the images understood the implication. The orb was not alone. It was a scout, a messenger, the first fragment of a civilization capable of manipulating gravity, warping distance, and infiltrating any machine humanity relied upon. Satellites were redirected, submarines deployed, but the closer vessels got to the coordinates, the worse their systems behaved. Lights pulsed, engines cut. A strange hum resonated through metal hulls. One ship supposedly heard voices coming through the static. Whispers in no known language, yet chillingly familiar, like ancestors calling from a forgotten past. The Pentagon sealed the entire operation under top classification. Anyone involved signed away their silence. But silence doesn't last forever. Files leak, conscience cracks, and once enough pieces emerge, a picture forms that no one can unsee. The orb traveled here with purpose. Its target wasn't random. It was reawakening something buried, something ancient, something humanity was never meant to disturb. And now, the question that terrifies every expert with clearance high enough to see the truth. What wakes when the Earth answers back? The coordinates burned inside the encrypted files weren't just a location. They were a countdown, a time, a moment, one that was inching closer every second. And if the rising structure beneath the waves was any indication, whatever had slept beneath our oceans for millennia was no longer content to remain hidden. Across the globe, sensors detected tremors, subtle at first, then increasingly rhythmic, not tectonic, mechanical, as though machines the size of mountains were powering up beneath the crust. And all the while, the stars overhead seemed to shimmer unnaturally, as if other watchers were shifting position, closing in. Those who knew the truth faced a decision darker than anything written into policy or war doctrine. Do we attempt communication, knowing we may invite domination, or do we prepare for war, against a foe older, wiser, and no longer asleep? Either path leads to the same conclusion whispered inside locked war rooms. This was never first contact. This was them, checking on something they left behind. And now that we've made noise, they know we're awake too.